Aloha. This video I wanted to expand upon the perspective of the last video of coming from like how we're shocked into our reality, basically being shocked into a dead end program, or shocked into a system that has no concern for you and every concern for itself. It's all about protecting itself. I just watched this movie, American Made, the latest Tom Cruise movie that just came out. Basically about this guy, I think his name was something Seal, whatever his name was, something Seal. But it was based on a true story about the airline pilot who was pretty much the guy who was flying drugs from Colombia into the States in the late 70s and the 80s, and flying guns and drugs for the CIA with Pablo Escobar and that whole Contra thing that went down with Reagan and Bush, that whole manipulation of the system as if it's not one entity. All the guns and the drugs that come in to this nation and in the inner cities are not an accident. It's on purpose. This stuff is designed to maintain a particular level of consciousness within the people, specific groups of people at that, at specific time frames, in order to control pretty much every layer of possible revolt, every layer of consciousness, every layer of relationships that the masses of people have. Like every part of our system is locked down, from your soul to the mind to the body. It's not just your food that's being genetically modified, but the drugs that are in your community are for like pretty much genetically modifying your relationships. The guns in the society are genetically modifying your relationships in society and culture and so on and so forth. Like, this whole system is not an accident. All of this stuff is on purpose. They are creating, that's the whole ordo ab chaos, which is the order out of chaos system. Is as long as they maintain chaos in the masses, then they look like a shiny superhero up on the pedestal of saviors. So as long as society and your system is maintained as being chaotic, then you need a superhero to save the day for you. So this is where the military-industrial complex comes in. All of these wars that are completely unjust, these systems that are as a result of the military-industrial complex, the empire of the colonial world, all of these systems, even up into definitely heliocentrism, it's a design to create chaos. If you really go into it, you can argue easily that heliocentrism creates chaos in your spirit, chaos in your mind, your higher mind, and then as a result creates chaos in society and the physical world. So by not being connected with nature, by not subconsciously being connected to your brothers and sisters and nature as a whole, that's not only the result of what's going on, but the other side of that is you're simultaneously floating in a limbo world that has to maintain some kind of even keel. So you have two things that are affecting the individual and the collective when chaos gets installed into the society. You get distracted and detached from that which is nature, that heals you, that maintains natural balance and natural order, and you create a synthetic version of interacting. So that synthetic version of interacting is based in response to chaos, and this is pretty much at the infrastructure of what I was talking about in the last video, where people are in shock. Like this, in society, the individual, the collective as a whole is in shock right now, and expressing that shock in different ways. So the shock of realizing that all of your so-called beneficial parts of your reality, through the Western civilization, through colonialism, are a result of genocide and massacre. Like, stop right there and think about how that's going to affect you consciously if you were hearing that every day. Consciously, if you were, and not doing anything about it any day. Like, subconsciously, that's actually happening because we are aware of that information every day, yet nothing is happening. So that's pretty much an internal chaos program that's been installed into the Western world. And the side effect to that, the adjustment to that reality, is people living their lives in the idea of the American dream as if it's the best thing since sliced bread, as if this entire system wasn't at all based on lies, broken treaties, destruction, massacre, pretty much looking the other way from that which needs to be healed, looking the other way from that which needs to be acknowledged. And now that you have all of these systems in place that are pretty much like amplified every day through social media, television, politics, that this is the best thing. Democracy, capitalism, the way this entire system is run, Hollywood, all of this stuff. And when I mention stuff like democracy and capitalism and all that other stuff, that doesn't mean I'm talking about communism and all that, and socialism and all that other stuff is like the best thing. I say that now, and most people that watch these videos know what I'm talking about when I reference that stuff. But there still are some people that are going to get in the comment section and say some stupid shit like, oh, another pusher for democracy or socialism or communism or some shit like that. No, all of these systems, that's what I said in like many of the previous videos, you're basically choosing bags of shit just over and over again. They present these bags of shit to you and they say, choose one. It's no different than like the Hegelian Dialectic. It's designed to create this idea of authority and this idea of choice and freedom by giving you the option of Democrat and Republican. So that's the same thing that goes with like democracy and communism. It's the same thing that's happening. It's a Hegelian dialectic. You don't want to be like Russia. This is why they can't stop fighting Russia. Because if they stop fighting Russia, then they actually stop fighting the Hegelian dialectic program stops. It's like if the Democrats and the Republicans stop doing what they're doing, then the Hegelian dialectic of this so-called capitalistic, so-called democratic system in the United States, the so-called Western world, will not have the same mind control effect as it does when people are locked into one or the other. That's the magic of the Hegelian dialectic. Hollywood maintains this perspective when they're always talking about the commie bastards. Excuse me, when they're always talking about Russia, when they're always talking about like World War I and World War II. That's why you have all of these movies that are out there. You ever ask yourself, like, why are there so many World War I and World War II movies that are out there? It's not because there's such a great demand for those movies. It's because that's a mind control program to keep replaying the movie. It's like keep replaying your indoctrination to how amazing the Western democratic capitalistic American superheroes are. It's no different than the same propaganda that's being pumped through the people, supposedly being pumped through the heads in people in North Korea. I've never been over there. I don't know what's going on. I know there's conspiracy by what's going on over there. But from what you have heard about North Korea and the propaganda of, you know, how the Kim Jong-un and all of his bloodline are all like amazing people, and that whole like people crying at the feet of their leader and that whole thing. The same thing happens here. What do you think's happening with people defending Trump and all his racist stuff and all the people that are actually getting fired and in trouble for basically taking the same perspectives of Trump and then, you know, saying it on social media or saying it on their jobs, and then people are just like, what the fuck did you just say? No, you're done. You're out of here. Get your simple ass out of here with all that stupid Confederate bullshit. You're done. And then it's like, oh. No, the mainstream media is flipping and reversing what I'm saying and making it seem like I'm racist. No, you just called an NFL coach a nigger. You're fired. That's not something that just slipped out or happened to be. You're constantly living as that individual, and it's boiling up so much in your reality that it actually not only slipped out of your mouth, but it was created, and it created a thought pattern that was formalized into a space of you actually having to defend it. And now you're the victim. No, sorry, sir. You're living in an illusion. And that's on purpose. That's how this system wants it to be. As long as you are locked into those realities, then you need a superhero to save the day. So this was Barack Obama after George Bush. This was the illusion of Bernie Sanders against Hillary Clinton and Donald Trump. This is all these things that are out there. And what I really want to get to is basically the infrastructure of zombie land. Like, we're in shock. Like, all of these little things you can't look at. There's so many things within the diagnosis of the shock of humanity, the shock of looking at the Western civilization, the shock of looking at colonialism. There's so many systems, just like the shock of flat earth. Like, how many damn things did you have to go through to finally convince yourself of your basic observations of your reality? Like the theory of gravity being created, the theory of relativity, the theory of the Big Bang, the theory of evolution, the theory of satellites, the theory of space, the theory of planets, the theory of NASA, the theory of the moon landing, all of these theories that are out there. You had to go through each one. That's no different than you having to go through each one of the genocides and the massacres of building up the Western civilization. So flat earth is just one example of like how much you would have to go through to expand your consciousness outside of the heliocentric deception and the illusions that keep you defending something as ridiculous as that. Now look at how much you would have to go through and heal when you're starting to unveil the shock and the destructive mentalities of humanity and the human history. So you have the NASA and the heliocentric history, but is that it? Is that all we've been lied to about? Is there possibly more? Yes, obviously, because the heliocentric model is boiling down to power. Power with the idea of intellect, power with the idea of the university system, power with the idea of the evolutionary peak of monkey evolution into UC Berkeley and Yale and Stanford and all these other institutions, literally a crazy house, an institution that is supposed to be the evolutionary peak of humanity. So institutionalized people, when you look at that mentality, run the world, like these pirates, these criminals. All of your laws today that have people in jail today for minor offenses all the way up throughout the whole system, all of this entire system was built by criminals, by pirates, trying not to be found out for what they are themselves.
I'm not guilty. You're the one who's guilty. Lawmakers, the politicians, the Colombian drug lords, all you who lobby against making drugs legal, just like you did with alcohol during the Prohibition. You're the one who's guilty. I mean, come on, let's kick the ballistics here. Ain't no Uzis made in Harlem. I mean, not one of us in here owns a poppy field. This thing is bigger than Nino Brown. This is big business. This is the American way.
So they generated all this stuff and generated this pride and patriotism in order to make themselves out to be the superhero, when in actual fact, they were still owning slaves. They were still generating a deeper slave program. Look at Mount Rushmore. All of them owned slaves. And then people are going to say, oh, well, like slavery this and slavery that. Everybody had slaves, even not black people, and all this other stuff. All these things
give us all of the justifications and defenses and deflections from racism. In fact, it's so predictable. So predictable. Like, it's like every time you get in a conversation about racism, you know what you're going to get. You know what they're going to say. So much that it's like, can you just read? I don't see color. My parents raised me to treat everyone as equals. I don't think anyone should be able to say it. Niggers, all lives matter. That's reverse racism. What about black on black crime? Maybe if we stopped talking about it so much, it would go away. Actually, according to Webster's dictionary, the definition of racism is, maybe if you guys cared about the black deaths in your community, then we would care more about not being racist. Black people owned slaves too. I bet you didn't know that the Republican Party freed the slave. Niggers. Slavery was 400 years ago. You guys are stuck in a victim mindset, and you're never gonna get progress if you don't get out of it. Black Lives Matter is a terrorist organization. Martin Luther King wouldn't stand for this. Black Lives Matter is violent. He was about peace. Niggers. If you don't like it here, go back to Africa. Ha! Pull yourself up by your bootstraps and stop making excuses. Niggers. You guys have affirmative action. I can't be racist. My best friend is black.
All of these things that are generated by people not wanting to look at things. They don't want to see the reality. So they create some kind of prescription drug. Like, that was an example of somebody creating a prescription drug with not wanting to look at colonialism, not wanting to look at Western civilization, not wanting to look at the real history of this parasite that is the colonial empire. The parasite that is, excuse me, the system of haves and have-nots. It's a parasite, and people are defending the parasite because the parasite makes you feel full. It's like a tapeworm or something. You're not really hungry because the tapeworm has filled your stomach. It's filled your entire whatever, but you're constantly having to consume something to feed that parasite. But you're not ever getting full. You're not getting any nutrition. In fact, you're dying quicker because every piece of energy that you're consuming and every piece of work that you're putting out that makes you consume more energy is getting filtered straight through that tapeworm. And basically you're saying that, you know, since you are surrounded by resources and you're not as far off as other nations, you're convincing yourself that everything is fine, everything is okay when it's not. And that is the prescription drug reality that is a result of being in shock. No different than people celebrating flat earth. No different than people celebrating, being a truther and all this other stuff. You know, if you're celebrating all that, you haven't really seen what you're responsible for now. Excuse me. The responsibility there and the depths of what has come as a result of the lies. You call yourself a truther, but how deep have you gone into the idea of truth to where you're just celebrating being woke and being a truther when you go to the depths of that truth? you don't really have anything to celebrate. You have a lot of work to do. You see that there's a lot of work that needs to be done, not only individually, but collectively. And you also see how many other people are still enslaving themselves. And it's very, like, the deeper you go into the truth, or deeper you go into the rabbit hole, the harder it is to see. You need to carry your own light, and it needs to come from the inside. So a lot of these other programs like Flat Earth, Truther, stuff like that, from the mainstream or commercial perspective of it, they're just prescription drugs pretty much. So people call themselves conspiracy theorists. They pride themselves in, you know, knowing all this information, like the personality of Mark Dice. And then, like, he's so confident, he's so, like, in the know of information, but you see what information he's not talking about. You see what perspective he's not talking about. Same thing with Alex Jones. But look how confident they are. Look how full of truth they are. You see, so it's just a matter of your comfort level and what your, like, what movie you choose to watch, pretty much. So you like kids who like different cartoons. It's the same thing. These individuals are adults who like different late night talk show hosts. It's the same thing. And it's just another version of the Hegelian Dialectic. Like, which more do you resonate with, the Democrats or Republicans? Well, I guess the Democrats, because they're like with Hollywood people and they seem more reasonable. So they're more like progressive, and you hear that tone that's in everything. You're never confident about anything because internally, you know, all of it is bullshit. So this is why people talk like this when they're talking about stuff all the time, and they have nothing that is anchored in any kind of depth in their reality. It's just dead already. So that's the shock. That's people dealing with shock. And ultimately, people are not dealing with shock and living in zombie land. So in this video, I wanted to get into the space of what people are being prepped for. Now that they're in zombie land, they have to be given a bigger prescription drug to make it look like they're awakened or they are woke. This is why all this awakened and woke stuff is being commercialized through Black Lives Matter, through social media, through your Hollywood activists. Everything is about woke this and woke that, because they're getting ready to activate the New Age agenda. And the New Age agenda is the cousin of the New World agenda. It's the same thing. It's a New World Order. They have to go in steps. They have to sell these agendas to you in steps. So you have the New Age, you have the alien agenda within that, you have alien shows all over cable, you have ancient aliens being released, giving you so-called like truth information about your ancient ancestors. So they take all of your connection to your ancestors and water it down to aliens. The same thing that's going on with this ancestry stuff. And take a look at this so you can see what I'm talking about with the ancestry stuff. I mentioned this topic about a year ago, almost a year and a half ago, about how they're talking about utilizing this ancestry stuff for the benefit of the next agenda. How this de-evolution program is going to be evolved into this oneness unification space of change and United Nations and all this other stuff. But they're using these celebrities. They've been programming individuals to fall into this DNA ancestry free stuff and locate your ancestry all over the world. Give us your DNA and then we'll code it here and tell you who and what you are and where you came from. Basically, this is to back up the artificial roots program, like the revamping of the Roots documentary on the History Channel. and they're using the amplification of these celebrities in the political scheme and in your personal lives, watching stuff on like the Nova channel and all this other stuff. They're putting all these different supposedly different kinds of people and different looking people in your face on a regular basis in Hollywood, in the music industry, in politics now, to sell the next agenda, which is going to be this whole like, we're all one. If you look at the DNA evidence that we provide, that we give you, that we looked up, see, look, it's true. Everybody here came from the west coast of Africa, and you know, this is all what it's all about. So now we just got to move on from, it's not slavery times anymore, all this other bullshit. So they're getting these celebrities out there in your face with Bernie Sanders and this whole, like, let's make some change. Let's go against the system that has been, you know, the top 1% that's been beating up. Or they get all these people that you vested your energy in with all these movies and television shows that have been smiling at your face for your entire lives. You tried to emulate these individuals. You try to be like these people. You try to dress like them and eat like them and work like them and be successful like them. And now they're going to lock it into, oh, you're genetically just like them. So all the Kim Kardashian stuff, like, they're famous for nothing. Like nothing. They're famous for nothing. Kim Kardashian, this whole Beyonce going into the expansion of or talking about race relations and this whole thing. This is all to prime you for this new United Nations one world government / religion / unity idea program. So that was pretty much where I was coming from back then in reference to how this system is doing a soft opening of the New Age agenda through your Hollywood, through the politics, through TV, to suck you into this unification, one world, everything's okay, everything is awesome, New Age perspective, and basically no kind of justice ever comes into being because everybody's in this, oh, let's just forgive everything New Age perspective. And basically they just created an out for themselves.
Hey, you. That's right, you. Wouldn't you like to know the story of you? What makes you, you? DNA and Me is a genetic service that can help you find out exactly who your ancestors were. You might be surprised.
I thought I was just a standard white guy, but DNA and Me showed that I'm actually 4.2% Cherokee Indian.
Turns out I'm not totally white. I'm also part Northern Asian and even some Kurdish. I'm a victim of oppression.
I used to get in trouble for always using the N-word, but with DNA and Me, I found out that I'm 2.1% black.
Morning, Steve.
Sup, nigga? The test is easy. Simply swab the inside of your mouth and send it into our labs.
People made fun of me for being French. DNA and Me showed I was 8% Navajo. Nobody's making fun of me now, or my people, who were victims.
I'm 13% victim.
I'm 21% victim.
Order now and find out if your friends should be more sympathetic towards you. DNA and Me. Are you in? Hell f***ing yes, I'm in.
So as long as everything is being made fun of, as long as everything is known and, you know, it's out there, people think that, everything is okay just because it's within the awareness. They think there's an underground superhero that's going to save the day. And this is what I was saying in the video of that I'll link in the description of everything you need to know about the New Age agenda with David Wilcock, who's tied in with ancient aliens and so on and so forth. When he gives you the perspective of, you know, there's good people in the government, there's good people in Hollywood that are trying to wake us up, become more woke, and, you know, let you know that the system is being run by dark entities, and the good entities that are within the system need some time to release this information. So they're using Hollywood. They're using well, just listen to his words.
So what we have now is films that are made by the Department of Defense. Ultimately, they made those films. And those films are preparing us for an exposure of the cabal. And you've seen me talk about some of these. One of the most incredible examples was the film Iron Man 3. A very, very popular film, the biggest film of the year. In that film, you have people who are infected with some sort of human enhancement virus that leads to them having redness appear on their skin. They're like demonic beings. And there is actually a scene where one of these beings melts a tower, and the tower comes down. They melt the steel beams. A vague but definite allusion to 9/11. You have a president who clearly was meant to look like George W. You have a vice president who clearly is supposed to look like Dick Cheney. And the punchline at the end of this movie, again, you can clearly trace that it was financed by the DOD, that it promotes the DOD. Iron Man has this smart suit that could very well be something similar to things that already exist, or at least maybe some degree of that. So that would be a really cool thing, to join a military in the future where you have a suit like Iron Man. And the point is that at the end of the movie, the Vice President of the United States is the one who financed a terrorist to attack the United States. A man played by Ben Kingsley, who was obviously supposed to be Bin Laden. This was the biggest film of the year. So when people tell me that there's no credence in the idea that there is an alliance, I say, bullshit. Go watch these movies.
So yeah, they're using Hollywood to release this information, and that's supposed to be your confirmation that everything is okay. That is the mechanism of trust within this system, trusting your slave masters. If you think that Hollywood is not at all the same part of the same hand that is the government and NASA and so on and so forth, then you're severely mistaken and completely ignorant to the depths of this reality. It's a mind control program. No matter what they put in an Iron Man movie or whatever they put in a Avengers movie or how much fancy music they put in it, it's designed to mind control you. But all of these movies that are out there, like I said in previous videos about the Jason Bourne movie, when they give you this example of, there's good CIA agents and then there's bad CIA agents, or there's good FBI agents and bad FBI agents, and then, Jason Bourne is caught in between and he has to be the one to save the day and fight for the good ones and, just continue on the movie and that whole thing. That's what all these movies are. They're all based upon locking you into a secret Hegelian dialectic. And the secret space program is part of that, with the good aliens and the bad aliens. David Wilcock's best friends with Corey Good, that whole thing. That's what all that alien agenda stuff is. And they release these documentaries on Netflix to lock you in to the movie. It's to keep you sucked in that game. And as long as you're sucked into the illusion, like Dr. Edward Nygma, the Riddler, the box that's in Batman Forever, that whole medicine through the television, they got you. You're a zombie. You're in shock. And while you're in shock, it's like somebody installing another movie for you. And then you just watch that movie called Western Civilization, called Transhumanism, called the New Age, called Oneness and Unity and all this other stuff. And the movie, like I just watched today, American Made, was probably the most revealing movie that is a good example of what I just explained to you in reference to getting the people to believe in the system. So if they make an entire movie that's based on a true story about the corruption of the CIA, not only do they show their hand to you, and if you just continue to accept the government after they've shown you all of the nonsense that they have been doing for decades, for centuries, they show you how the system is entirely corrupt. They've shown you that Pablo Escobar, that was demonized back in the 80s and the 70s, was working with the CIA. They've shown you that the individual that was flying all the guns and the drugs, you think it was just him flying guns down to Nicaragua and Venezuela and all those other people, Colombia down there for the Contra? You think the guns were just going down there? No, these guns are coming into the city, the inner cities. The drugs are coming into the inner cities. They don't want to tell you that story. So what a movie like American Made does is it makes light of the corruption of the entire system. It also makes a superhero out of the system slightly. Like, people are like, yeah, we do some fucked up things, but, hey, you got to do that when you're dealing with criminals like the drug cartel in Colombia. It's like, no, the biggest fucking criminal in that movie was the White House. The biggest criminal in that movie wasn't Pablo Escobar. It wasn't the guy who was running. It was who he was working for. It was Reagan. It was Bush, both Bushes, and every other part of that system. But you're focusing on the glory of the system and the entertainment value of that movie. So it makes light of it, and it simultaneously makes you think that things are changing for the better. You think things are changing for the better because Hollywood is releasing that information to the public. This is waking people up. I can't believe it. Tom Cruise must be a part of some secret cool crowd. Maybe that's why they're talking badly about Scientology, because I know he's part of Scientology. Maybe I'll look into Scientology and see what that's all about, because he can't be all bad if he's releasing this kind of information. You think there's a difference between Hollywood and George Bush, Barack Obama, and the system itself? You think there's a difference between the main? That's like they're saying that there's a difference between Fox and CNN and MSNBC and all the other news stations that are out there. It's one entity. It's protecting itself. They're all owned by the same people. They're all designed to have the same mechanism. So when you have people like David Wilcock convincing you, telling you, bullshit, if you don't think that there's people in there that aren't trying to wake you up, bullshit. Didn't you watch the Iron Man movie? They're talking about, get the hell out of here with that stupid shit, David. Some garbage. But that's what the New Age program is designed to do. It's designed to soften your perspective and soften your, it's like a soft zombieism, a soft shock. Soften the blow of this reality and simultaneously buy into the system. Believe that everything is going to be okay when the system fixes itself. It's no different than the so-called Civil Rights Act that wasn't there to face the essence of racism and injustice and the psychological disease and parasite that is this so-called democratic and so-called capitalistic system on stolen land, broken treaties. No, that's there to make you believe in chapter 4 of the book, and you're not reading the introduction or the other chapters, because that will reveal to you what the essence of this program is actually about, the design of it. So everybody who's walking around, priding themselves in the American dream is basically a zombie. Everybody who's priding themselves, even in the flat earth right now, going mainstream, you're a zombie. If you think that that is ever going to be presented to people in any kind of way other than to completely mind control you and bring in another agenda, you're completely lost. And the only way to make people, or one of the biggest ways to make people think they're not lost, is to convince them that they're not lost, that you're woke. It's like, no, you're exactly where you need to be. You're enlightened. You're woke. Flat Earth is the only thing that you need to know about. It's wonderful. It's going to save the day. It's going to wake everybody up. Wake everybody up to what is my question? Wake everybody up to another sleep? Another slumber? What good is that? If you approach it from a mainstream perspective, that's exactly what's going to happen. And that's what's being promoted by these bigger channels that are out there, who are just telling you just to keep it flat, and that's that. You know, it's not that. It's not that. It's more than that's flat. There's some information there. And the New Age is setting it up. That's why I just wanted to give that example in this. Like watching that movie, you know, they're going to, the main effect that it's going to have on people, the American-made movie, the main effect that it's going to have on people is they're going to think things are changing for the better because that information is being released by Hollywood, by your actors. And the same kind of perspective that David Wilcock had when he was talking about Iron Man 3 and the Iron Man movie, talking about, you know, all of the military action and all, revealing this, revealing Bin Laden and all that stuff. That's another movie to make you believe in the system as if there are good guys in the system. The same thing happened in the movie, American Made, where you had the DEA, the FBI, the CIA, the state troopers, and that whole thing. The compartmentalize of those systems are designed to make you think that, you know, some of them are good and some of them are very corrupt, because you need some very corrupt ones out there to do the dirty work. So you're just basically accepting that lesser of two evils, which is still evil. And this lesser of two evil system, which we call democracy of the United States, is not only the lesser of two evils, which is still evil, but it's a lesser of two evils that is built upon the foundation of evil. The system itself is evil, and it's not a lesser of two evils. It is the essence of two evils, the system itself. So if you're promoting some kind of fix-all prescription drug like Flat Earth or the New Age agenda or the alien agenda, secret space program, UFO, you know, star seeds from the Pleiadian or system, star system, or the Andromedas are going to come and save the day because they're the alliance to fight the cabal and the Illuminati, then you're just creating another superhero system. The same thing goes for the whole like the North Pole perspective of, you know, like as soon as, if we were just to reveal flat Earth, it's the same thing. If we were just to reveal what's going on at the North Pole, then everything will be okay. Like just like the flat Earth. What if they were to reveal you some kind of interdimensional portal at the North Pole? You know how long they could sell that distraction to people? It's like, oh, it's not a distraction, it's the truth. Okay, well, as that truth is being commercialized and turned into cartoons and movies and all these documentaries for you and your children, what is happening to the boots on the ground stuff that's going on? Do you think that's going to change, or is it going to be pushed to the side because there's something else to focus on now? Did the war on terrorism change when we went from Bush to Obama? No, it didn't. It actually got worse. But what changed within the people? Celebrating. So when you really see it from a larger perspective, when Obama got put in there after Bush, people actually started to celebrate terrorism, the war on terrorism, by celebrating Obama. Because in hindsight, Obama didn't do anything but, first of all, it's not him that's doing anything. He's just a piece on the board. But his resume in reference to the so-called war on terrorism involved more terrorism, more an expansion of that system. So when people were celebrating because they were just caught up in the first black president movie, they were actually celebrating the work that he did, which was expand the mind control program and expand the so-called war on terrorism. So that's what these mechanisms are for. This is what something like an alien agenda would do. The same thing that Obama did after Bush. Bush was supposed to be prosecuted for all that shit that he did. Lying about all those systems, lying about weapons of mass destruction, the hanging, the seeking out of Saddam, the seeking out of Gaddafi. Like all of this stuff that went down, that's going down with Syria, all the same stuff that's going on with Russia right now. Like they're just trying to maintain this fight to maintain the empire. And this is why a lot of people, so I heard another day a video in the so-called black conscious community, these individuals talking about, you know, the flat earth. And they were talking about, oh yeah, well, how would all these governments be lying? You think it's there is no all these governments. There's the so-called powers that be, that is one government, the government of haves over the have-nots. And then there's the people. There is no separation between this entire system. Like that movie was explaining about the drug cartel in Colombia and pretty much the drug cartel that's the United States of America. You think they're different? No, it's one entity. NASA and space programs around the world are one entity. Governments around the world are one entity. And in order to maintain the illusion of freedom, the illusion of separation of power, the illusion of not a one world government, they have to say, oh, this is this nation and we think this way, and that's that nation and we think that way. Meanwhile, they're just doing the same thing to maintain control over you, just in a different language, in a different style, in a different tongue, maintaining the illusion that they're fighting. You think that it's a fight? No. Just like the fact that World War I and World War II was being played by both sides. All these corporations, all these systems that were employed, was it U.S. Oil, IBM, employed by the Nazis, like selling oil to that whole wartime system. So it's one entity. At the same time, there's different factions within that one entity. But ultimately just boils down to the sheep who just constantly believe in the system, which is what David Wilcock, the New Age, and people were talking about this, falling into this, oh, the Hollywood is releasing, information about, oh, this is wonderful. So we just have to trust that everything is okay. And things will get better on their own. No, you're just falling for another move on the board to maintain the game. And when you've been locked into it for so long, you start to defend it. So that's what happened with those individuals in the so-called black conscious community that were defending the heliocentric model, because, you know, they can't wrap their heads around all of these space agencies being all in on one lie. It's like, well, if you do the work and you realize that any of the illusions that are promoted out there with this whole war on terrorism, Russia, the United States, all of the wars, the military-industrial complex, it all boils down to power and control. The empire itself of controlling the human experience. So there is no separation there. It's all one thing. And these movies are designed to make you believe in that one thing. These communities like the New Age community are designed to make you believe in that one thing. So the one thing in the flat earth community is flat earth and anti-NASA and possibly an infinite plane, possibly something. It's like more than one thing. But it boils down to one thing that is just not heliocentrism. And then the other thing, the one things that are in the New Age agenda are stuff like, you know, aliens, good aliens and bad aliens, and we're all one. We're all just the soul. Everything is okay. Everything is perfect. Everything is awesome because we're all about love and light and nothing else matters. The one thing that's in, you know, conspiracy worlds, for example, like Alex Jones, is, you know, Donald Trump is going to save the day. It's the patriots of 1776 against the globalists. And then, like, shrink it even down even further, more simplified, TYT, the one thing that they have. Oh, as long as we wait until the next election and then we get a good politician in there, then everything's going to be okay. So we'll just wait for the next Bernie Sanders. Shrink it down even further than that, the mainstream media. The Democrats, as long as we get a Democrat in the House, then everything will be okay when Trump's gone. You see how this Hegelian dialectic gets acted out all the way up the various layers of consciousness, the various layers of perspective, and whatever it is that you've chosen to accept as your reality, that's the movie that you're going to watch because it's comfortable for you. So that's pretty much what I wanted to sorry about that. I was gonna stop this video anyway I was so rudely interrupted by somebody's car alarm. But yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted to share. The start going into the depths of these programs and how they work. Continually expand your perspectives. One of the viewers of this channel asked for some book recommendations, and some other people asked for book recommendations too. And I usually kind of don't have many because most of the information that I share on these videos comes from just basically my experience and my observing my reality, and then cross-referencing all that information from perspectives that I've already had a while back. And not a lot of the information comes from books. It's just like feeling my way through what I've experienced and just paying attention to my surroundings. And that's not to say I haven't looked at any books, but that's just more to say that how I see it, it's more important to pay attention to the details of your reality, your immediate reality, and whatever books that will come as an example, or books is just an example of something to look deeper into. They'll come naturally on your own. So just follow, like, take it one step at a time. So like when somebody asks about books, I usually always say, like, look at the ISIS Papers by Dr. Francis Cress Welsing as one book to start to help you get into a compassionate interpretation of some of the things that a lot of the people, not just melanated people, but everybody is dealing with today, because white supremacy and racism affects everybody. So Dr. Francis Cress Welsing comes from a psychiatric and a psychological perspective of what that effect has on people. And It makes a lot of sense. It's very valid, very relevant, and it helps people see from a more compassionate and understanding, and overstanding perspective of what's going on, so individuals do not get caught up in the video game that is the race game that's being played out there. And I'm glad I said video game on top of that, because I almost forgot to mention in the last video when I was referencing being shocked back into this reality, the shock of that world and the whole paddles. Well, those paddles are, I think they're called shock paddles. Let me see. Oh, I write it down. I wrote it down too, because I was looking for a new thumbnail for the last video, and I'm pretty sure they are. Yeah, they're called shock paddles. And while I was looking for an image for shock paddles, I found what else are called shock paddles? The PlayStation joysticks on the controller for the PlayStation console. Those little paddles, those little joystick paddles, they're called shock paddles. So that was just another thing to add on to the whole shock, because a lot of people play video games for different reasons, but in reference to that last video specifically, you can see from a psychological perspective and an escape mechanism perspective, people play video games to just escape, disappear for a moment, and be in another world. Literally, they create these other worlds. There's like Second Life, is that other Dwight was talking about on The Office, playing Second Life. I don't even know that. I haven't played video games since like Super Nintendo. I think all my friends had like PlayStation and they played like Madden and all that stuff, but I think I only had a PlayStation 1, the little one, when it came out, only to play like Tiger Woods or something like that, and I only played it like a few times and I ended up like giving it away. But that's literally what it's for. It's for escaping reality. And in that last video, it goes perfectly with what I was explaining as far as the shock value of this reality. We're literally being shocked. And that's a good example. The video game console is a good example to put next to the perspective that I was saying with like what happens with flat earth. Flat earth is another kind of escape mechanism too after a certain amount of time. So you go through the process of realizing that, you know, the earth is not a globe. Then you have all this work to confirm it, like make it your reality by debunking the heliocentric and attempting to debunk the flat earth. So you're confirming your reality to yourself. So that's work that you have to do. So you're working. But once you finish with that work, you get into that confirmation, then you basically become another person. You become you have another outlook on life, and you become a deeper individual. So you don't just stop there, you have more work to do. But what tends to happen when you want to avoid work is that you want to escape again, because there's too much work to do, and you just finished working. You just finished doing all that work. You just finished unveiling flat earth. Why did I have to do some more work? Why? I'm tired, man. I don't want to do anything more. Well, that's what you're seeing with this whole mainstream flat earth channel stuff that's going on right now. It's just another version of shock. It's just another video game that's being played. And it's easy. It's easy to play video games. It's hard in the beginning, and it's still hard, you know, to deal with, you know, talking with people about flat earth here and there. I don't want to undermine that. What I'm saying is that in the long run, you know, you're not going to be able to just parakeet the flat earth, it's flat and that's that for the rest of your life. You know that you're going to have to eventually go into the depths of the how and the why of this reality. You know that. But as of now, we're just going to keep playing the video game because we're comfortable with the sheep mentality. We're comfortable with we're so hopeless, we're so powerless that the system is just going to do whatever it's going to do. So let's just wait it out and watch what Kyrie says. Let's watch what B.O.B. says. Let's watch what the next news article is going to say tomorrow. Let's watch what comes on the late night. Who's the next late night talk show host that's going to talk about flat earth? You realize where the power is in that perspective. It's still not with you. It's still with the individuals who lied to you in the first place, the slave masters, the illusionists. And that's where those mainstream channels are funneling you to maintain that powerless perspective. No different than the new age people who are doing the same thing when they're saying, don't tell me that there aren't good people in the CIA and the FBI and in the government that aren't working for the good aliens. You can't tell me that. That's bullshit. I've seen Iron Man 2. I've seen Iron Man 3. I know that there's good people out there. You can't tell me. I've watched American Made. I've seen them reveal the information about the CIA with Tom Cruise flying a plane, a government plane from Arkansas to Colombia. I've seen it. So I know there's good people in the system. They're going to take care of it. Just continue on loving and lighting your reality and playing the video games of distraction while everything just fixes itself. Okay? Everything's okay. Keep it flat. Keep it love and light. Everything's going to be just fine. It's going to fix itself. You don't have to watch anything. It's just going to be cool. All right? Stay calm. Stay cool. And if you jump out of line, clear. Shock you right back into it. And every day they just keep doing that over and over again. So it's a balance between shock and escape. Shock and escape. And that's pretty much what I wanted to share with this video. Just give another example of, how the system is other styles that the system is utilizing to usher in this next mind control program. And that's mainly where I'm coming from. That's where I feel my work is. So for people who are asking, like, why are you talking about flat earthers? Why don't you talk about the Zionists and the Jesuits and all that other stuff? Look, I understand that the biggest threat to empowerment is ignorance. It's not an individual or a group of people. It's ignorance. Those people or those groups of people might expand that ignorance, but ultimately it's ignorance. And the biggest weapon against ignorance and disempowerment is empowerment and information. So as long as we are continuing to empower people, see, it's not locked into any one thing. See, flat earth might help empower people, but people who are vesting their energy in flat earth being the empowerment of the people is where you've already lost. Because it's not you, it's not us, it's something. So it's easily manipulated, and it's already dead when you're talking about the art of war. Because this is a war. Not just a physical, not just a psychological, but a spiritual war. And we're talking about empowerment. Empowerment helps people that can't be taken away. Information helps people break that ignorance that can't be taken away. Vesting your energy in a system that's outside of you, then thinking that that's going to save the day, is not empowerment. It's another superhero. It's another savior. Vesting all of your energy in the so-called enemies is not empowerment. It's not facing the ignorance. It might trigger a few people to help them get on a path of empowerment and get out of that ignorance. But ultimately, you're still playing the game when you focus your energy only on them. That's not to say not be aware of what they're doing. That's to say be completely aware of what they're doing, but vest your energy in yourself, which is the self that is everybody outside of this slave program, outside of this haves and have-nots program. That's the true weapon that will combat this slave program and this ignorance. So that, and the biggest threat to that happening is when people lock them. So the biggest threat to people combating ignorance and the biggest threat to empowerment is people who are telling other people, from my perspective, the biggest threat to that is people who are telling other people to just play the video game. Just maintain your shock. Just be happy with this system. Be cool with everything. Those are the biggest threats, not the enemies that you can see in your face that are obvious. The Jesuits, the Zionists, the people that are publicized through the conspiracy, the Trumps that are out there. That's the distraction, obviously. What makes you think all of the more secretive systems that are out there are not also a distraction? So to avoid all of that distraction and all of that system, not to be ignorant of it, to avoid the downfalls of it, and also fight that system, is to empower yourself, is to release the density of those systems and release the ignorance that comes as a result of those systems, and not consume yourself with escaping from looking at those systems. And once you get on a roll of empowering yourself and releasing the density of that ignorance, you'll realize that those enemies are just tiny. They're tiny because you don't have that fear anymore. They're big because of the fear of you vesting your energy in that world. But once you expand outside of that, you don't have a fear of death. You don't have a fear of their illusions. You don't have a fear of anything that's going on in that physical lockdown that they put you in. Then you can step into a world that can't be fucked with. That's your sole perspective. So they can mind control you. It's like breaking through the physical reality. You break through that when you have no fear that's projected onto you of limiting yourself to the physical body. Then you have to break through the mind control. Once you break through the mind control, then you have no fear of being deceived and so on and so forth, because your discernment is, activated on level 1,000,000. And not only that, but your higher mind, your intellectual perspectives are activated in a space that is forever growing. So that's the empowerment perspective. Once that activates, then you get into a space of your soul perspective. And that's when you have all these cylinders running on themselves, not in response to the system, not in reaction to the system. They are running on your own energy, on your own empowerment. And you can't run those systems. You can't activate that space if you're still bogged down by the distraction, the escape mechanism, and so on and so forth of the entities of that system in the first place. So it's basically like releasing the parasites of the soul, the mind, and the body. And once you release those parasites, then you can start to activate your own function. And that's different for everybody. Everybody's going to do it in their own way. And so that's when people ask for solutions, and I don't know any solutions. All I can tell you is, share with you what I've done to release the parasites that have held me back from, fighting myself, from when I was fighting myself and destroying myself. And it's different for me. For me, this is my power. This is part of my power, being able to interpret this information and share it with people. This is what I've unveiled and unlocked after having released all that. Not all of it, because we're always doing it, but released a good chunk, a majority of the density of these illusions that are out there, to be able to interpret this information and have an awareness of how these mind control programs are not only affecting us, but expanding to affect us in the future. That's what I would consider part of my art. So I used to play baseball. I used to do a lot of things, but now this is an art for me, just as much as anything else. Any sports that I was playing, writing, this is that style, and it's each person has their own version of that. And some people might not be geared up to be doing something like that in this lifetime or right now. Maybe they have a responsibility of, being the foundation for their children to do that. So their responsibility is to set up their children to activate that space and not be bogged down by the system. So it's different. It's very complex at the same time. It really boils down to not how woke or awakened or enlightened you are, but how literally light you are after having released all the density and cleared out all these parasites from your reality. So that's my hope and my intent when I share these videos. And I thank you guys for the support I get. I really do appreciate it. I'm not just saying that. I do appreciate it because it does help me out. It triggers a lot of things that I can go into to help other people see some things that maybe they hadn't seen before. So you're helping the art at the same time. At the same time, for people who are leaving comments, also be mindful of your own perspectives, your own ego, your own, densities, and how they're projected onto me. If something, is off-putting in a video, like I'm sure that video that I shared in here, where the guy was talking about stuff racist people say, the intent there is to make people aware of something they might not have been aware of. But people like me have to deal with that shit every day, pretty much. Somebody's potentially going to say something stupid like that. And then when we respond in some kind of way, then we're the bad guys. Like we did something wrong. It's like me, like opening up to people, like how I was raised in certain communities is aggressive to people. Like if I were to talk with people or be cool with people in one place, like I do when I was back in Oakland, it seems like aggressive, and people like say, oh, they'd want to stay away from me because it's a good example is like when you first meet some people, and you get used to them and so on. It takes a while for you to warm up to people. If I were just to be me right off the bat, like the me that is like the interactive me with people from my hometown, that is automatically seen as aggressive or some kind of weird whatever perspective. Not because that's who or what I am. That's because how people perceive that. We have to deal with that shit every day. It's no different than, somebody following you around a store. Are you a criminal because you have darker skin, you have long hair? No. But society has installed that system into your reality, and now that's something that you have to deal with every day that other people don't have to deal with. In fact, it's the opposite. So sharing information like that will help people see, like, no, this is not the intent to say that all white people are racist or anything like that. No, it's not as simple as that. It's a psychological operation that's going on here that is very destructive. And by looking in this information, we'll be able to heal ourselves because we put an awareness on it, which before was just being avoided and ignored. And that's the zombie perspective, the shock value, the escape mechanism of, we're all one. It's all okay. We're all American. We should just unify and come together. All right. If you think it's that simple, watch what's going to happen when they kick their next agenda into gear. They've already given you a little teaser of it with Bernie Sanders, with Barack Obama. They've given you that little teaser, but they had the opportunity to buy 4 more years of distraction with Donald Trump. So just be aware of how this stuff is being played out. Keep an eye on the New Age community. Keep an eye on the United Nations. Keep an eye on this whole political scene, your activists. And simultaneously empower yourself. Release all of that ignorance. Release all of this stuff that's there. And we'll figure it out one day at a time. So thank you for joining me. And until next time, from all my relations, peace, love, and harmony.